Imagine packing up your entire life. Just moving out to a picturesque, dusty mountain town in the wild west of Colorado and setting up a brand new dental practice.
Right, in a real frontier town.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the year 1901. You open your doors, your very first patient sits in the chair, you ask them to open wide, and you are just horrified.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Right. Their teeth are entirely covered in these dark chocolate brown stains. I mean, the enamel is pitted, it's spotted, and it just looks completely ruined.
Yeah, it sounds awful.
You think, wow, this poor person has a terrible disease. But then your next patient comes in. Same brown stains, then the town mayor, then the sheriff.
Everywhere.
Almost every single person in town has these monstrously stained teeth. But when you take your little metal dental pick and tap on those ugly brown teeth, something completely impossible happens.
They don't break.
They don't crumble at all. They are as hard as rock. In fact, nobody in this town has a single cavity. It just makes zero sense. So, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are diving into water fluoridation.
It really is the ultimate medical mystery. And honestly, it completely turned the scientific world upside down back then.
It did. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe you're filling up your coffee maker or, I don't know, boiling some pasta or just pouring a simple glass of water from your kitchen sink. We have this built-in expectation that tap water is just simple.
Like gravity. It's just there.
Exactly, like gravity. You turn the shiny metal handle, clear liquid comes out, you drink it, end of story.
But when you actually grab a microscope and look at what is swimming around inside that water, you realize we are dealing with a massive cocktail of chemistry, public health, and human biology.
A huge cocktail.
And right now, that cocktail is the center of a massive nationwide legal and scientific earthquake. Like, the safety of that exact glass of water you just poured is being debated in federal courts and top-level government offices.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why scientists and judges are fighting about what is in our tap water today, we have to go back to that dentist in Colorado over 100 years ago.
Right, Frederick McKay.
Yeah, McKay. He is staring at these indestructible chocolate brown teeth, which the locals just casually called the Colorado brown stain.
And McKay was completely obsessed with this. I mean, he knew it couldn't just be a coincidence. If 90% of the people living in this one specific area had the exact same bizarre teeth, they had to be sharing something.
Right, they're in the same environment.
Exactly. They were breathing the same air, eating food from the same soil, and most importantly, drinking from the same water supply. He suspected the water, but the problem was the technology in the early 1900s just wasn't good enough to find the culprit. Water looks clear even when it's hiding invisible minerals.
Wait, I have to jump in here. If you are a dentist in the early 1900s, a time when dentistry mostly consisted of a guy with pliers yanking rotting teeth out of people's skulls without modern painkillers, wouldn't you just celebrate the fact that nobody had tooth decay?
You'd think so, yeah.
I mean, why spend decades obsessing over the color?
Well, because the stains were genuinely disfiguring. We aren't talking about a slight yellowing from drinking too much coffee. We are talking about deep, dark, pitted modeling that made teeth look like they were literally rotting, even though they were physically strong.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. McKay wanted to know if he could somehow get that strength without the ugly stains. But he couldn't figure out the chemistry. It actually took another 30 years and a totally different town to crack the case.
Right. The story jumps to 1931, all the way over to a tiny place called Bauxite, Arkansas. Now, Bauxite was an aluminum mining town.
A totally different environment.
Totally different. And the company mining the aluminum started noticing that the local kids also had the Colorado brown stain. The company executives just panicked.
Oh, I bet. They thought they were being blamed.
Exactly. They thought, oh no, people are going to think our aluminum mining is poisoning the town's water and ruining the kids' teeth. So they bring in a top-tier chemist to test the water from their deep wells.
And that chemist finally finds the invisible ghost hiding in the water. He uses newly invented testing methods and discovers incredibly high levels of a specific, naturally occurring mineral that just comes from rocks and soil.
Just scraping off the rocks.
Right. As the underground water scraped against the rocks, it was dissolving this mineral and carrying it into the town's drinking wells. And that hidden ingredient was fluoride.
So, mystery solved. Fluoride causes the brown stains, but it also somehow makes the teeth completely bulletproof against cavities. It reminds me of like finding a magical shield in a video game.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, so the shield makes you completely invincible in battle. No sword can scratch you. But the massive catch is that simply holding the shield permanently turns your skin bright purple.
Right, a huge side effect.
Yeah. The scientists' new job was to figure out how to give people just a tiny splinter of the shield. Just enough magic to stop the swords, but not enough to turn you purple.
That is the perfect way to visualize what the scientists did next. They went on a nationwide mapping mission. They tested water in cities all across the country. And they found a real pattern.
What kind of pattern?
Well, in places where the mineral was super concentrated in the ground, you got the invincible brown teeth. But in places where the mineral barely existed at all, people's teeth were rotting and full of cavities. So they started doing the math. What if there's a sweet spot? What if we could dial the mineral to the exact perfect level?
Like a Goldilocks zone for teeth.
Exactly. And they found it. They realized that if the water had just 1 part per million of this mineral, the magic happened.
1 part per million. That sounds tiny.
It is. To picture 1 part per million, think of a massive Olympic-sized swimming pool and dropping just a few tiny drops of food coloring into it. It is an incredibly small diluted amount. But at that specific level, children grew up without the awful brown stains, yet they still gained a massive resistance to cavities.
Which leads to 1945 and the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is a huge moment. Grand Rapids becomes the first city in the entire world to intentionally dump this mineral into their public water supply.
A huge milestone.
They basically turned the entire city into a massive science experiment. They monitored the kids' teeth for years, and the results were just staggering. Cavities in kids plummeted by 60%. 60%.
You really have to put yourself in the shoes of a parent in 1945 to understand the relief. Dental decay back then was a nightmare.
It wasn't just a trip to the dentist for a filling.
No, not at all. Teeth would rot, get horribly infected, cause swelling, and lead to serious illnesses. Kids missed school, adults missed work, and the only real cure was the painful yanking of the tooth. Suddenly, the public health officials in Grand Rapids are saying, we can stop the rot before it even starts, just by having you drink your tap water.
It was treated like the moon landing of public health, a total triumph. It was so insanely popular that by 1956, the massive national toothpaste brands started putting the mineral directly into their tubes of paste.
Yep, it was everywhere.
They advertised it everywhere. Everyone wanted the cavity-fighting magic in their homes. But let me hit the brakes here.
Okay, sure.
Because it sounds like a total miracle. So how did we go from celebrating this to taking each other to federal court over it? Why are there lawsuits trying to force the government to take it out of the water?
The answer comes down to a massive shift in how we understand the human body. For the first 50 years of this experiment, doctors and scientists genuinely believed the mineral worked from the inside out.
From the inside out, what do you mean?
Well, the theory was simple. A child drinks a glass of water, the mineral goes into their stomach, it gets absorbed into the bloodstream, and as their adult teeth are secretly growing up inside their gums, the mineral physically builds the tooth from the inside.
Ah, okay. Drink the magic potion, grow the magic shield.
Right. But as technology advanced, and scientists could track things on a microscopic level, they realized that original theory was mostly wrong.
Wait, wrong!
Yeah. The primary way this mineral prevents cavities isn't systemic, meaning from the inside. It is topical. It works on the outside surface of the tooth.
Okay, hold on. Explain the difference. Like, I'm an 8th grader. How does it actually work on the outside?
Think of the enamel on your teeth like a brick wall. Every time you eat sugar, the bacteria in your mouth throw acid at that brick wall, trying to dissolve the mortar and pull the bricks out. That is how a cavity starts. It's a hole in the wall.
Makes sense.
When you brush your teeth with toothpaste that has this mineral, or when you swish water in your mouth, the mineral washes over the outside of the brick wall. It acts like a super strong magical mortar. It actually jumps into the empty spaces where the wall was getting weak and hardens it up. It repairs the wall from the outside.
Ah, I love that. It's like applying sunscreen. If you are going to the beach and you want to protect your skin from the sun, you rub the sunscreen on the outside of your body. It creates a physical barrier on the surface.
Exactly.
You would never, chug a bottle of sunscreen and expect your skin to suddenly block UV rays from the inside out.
And that is exactly where the scientific alarm bells started ringing. Because if the sunscreen only needs to touch the outside of the tooth, what happens to the rest of the body when you swallow it?
If we know it works best when it just touches the outside of the teeth, why are we still swallowing it?
Right, because when you drink a glass of treated tap water, the mineral washes over your teeth for maybe 2 seconds. Then it goes down your throat, into your stomach, and enters your entire bloodstream. It goes everywhere.
So where does it end up? If our bodies don't actually need it internally, how do we get rid of it?
Well, your kidneys act like the body's water filter, and they do a pretty good job. When you swallow the mineral, your kidneys manage to filter out about 50% of it, and you just pee it out.
Okay, that's half.
But the other 50% stays trapped inside you. This mineral is magnetically attracted to calcium. Your bones and your teeth are basically giant calcium storage units. So the mineral parks itself in your bones.
Okay, bones I can somewhat understand. But the part of the research that really shocked me was what happens with pregnant mothers. Because the mineral doesn't just stop at the mother's bones, does it?
No, it doesn't. And this is the pivot that changed the entire scientific conversation. A pregnant mother has an amazing organ called the placenta. Think of the placenta as an incredibly strict bouncer at an exclusive nightclub.
The nightclub being the baby.
Yes, the nightclub is the developing baby. The bouncer's job is to let the good stuff in like oxygen and nutrients and violently block the bad stuff, like toxins or massive bacteria, from getting to the baby.
Good bouncer.
But this cavity-fighting mineral is a tiny, naturally occurring element. It's so small that it slips right past the bouncer. It crosses the placenta and goes directly into the developing baby.
Which brings us to the most sensitive organ of all, the baby's brain. Now, we are looking at a massive review done by national toxicology experts. We aren't talking about one lone scientist in a basement.
No, not at all.
This was a multi-year review of 74 different studies from all over the planet. And they came back saying they have moderate confidence that higher levels of this mineral in a pregnant mother are linked to lower intelligence scores in her child.
What's fascinating here is why the developing brain is so vulnerable. An adult brain is fully constructed. The highways of communication are already paved. If an adult drinks this mineral, their sturdy, finished brain can handle it.
Right.
But a baby's brain inside the womb is a massive construction zone. Millions of delicate neurons are trying to connect and build pathways. If you introduce a foreign chemical into that construction zone, it acts like a roadblock. It disrupts the delicate signaling. What is perfectly safe for a 30-year-old adult can be a serious obstacle for a fetus that is the size of a lemon.
Let's talk about the actual numbers from these studies, because they are wild. We're looking at major studies done recently in Canada and Mexico. And these aren't far off places with totally different lifestyles. They have very similar diets and water systems to the United States.
Very similar, yeah.
They tracked pregnant mothers, measured the exact amount of the mineral in their bodies, and then waited years to test the children's intelligence. They found that a slight increase of the mineral in the pregnant mother led to a drop of about 1 to 4 points on the child's intelligence test. And they noticed it was particularly hitting boys.
Right, boys seemed more impacted in those specific studies.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second here. If I take a test and score a 96 instead of a 100, or a drop of just 1 to 4 points, is that really a massive crisis? Are we really upending a century of public health over a couple of points on a test? It almost sounds like statistical noise.
That is the exact pushback a lot of people have. 1 to 4 points for one individual child is completely invisible. As a parent, you would never notice if your child was 3 points lower. Right. But public health doesn't look at individuals, it looks at populations. Think of a dimmer switch on your dining room light. If you turn that dimmer switch down by just 2%, your eyes adjust instantly. You won't even realize the room is darker.
That makes sense.
But imagine if you have a massive city of millions of people and you dim the lights across the entire city by 2%. The total loss of light is enormous.
So it shifts the whole bell curve of the population.
Precisely. If every child in a city drops a few points, the entire population shifts downward. Suddenly, you have a few thousand fewer kids who qualify for gifted programs. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have a few thousand more kids who slip into the category of needing special education or extra tutoring. The societal cost of that tiny invisible drop when multiplied by millions of kids is staggering.
Okay, but if the science now clearly shows the sunscreen belongs on the outside of the tooth, and we know that swallowing the sunscreen could be dimming the lights in developing brains, why on earth are we still swallowing it? Why is it still coming out of the kitchen sink?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. And the reason it's so hard to fix brings us to what scientists call the measurement problem.
Right.
Once the government realized the fetal brain might be at risk, they scrambled to figure out exactly how much of this mineral the average person is actually swallowing on a daily basis.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and spoiler alert, it is way, way more than they intended back in 1945.
Way more.
Let's look at the limits. Originally, the government said our water could have up to 1.2 parts per million. But recently, public health officials panicked a bit and lowered that recommendation down to zero point 0.7. They essentially cut the dose almost in half.
They had to lower it because the world changed. Back in Grand Rapids in the 40s, the only way you got this mineral was if you drank a glass of tap water. That was it.
It was simple.
But today, it is absolutely everywhere. You wake up, you brush your teeth with mineralized toothpaste, and even if you spit it out, you accidentally swallow a tiny bit. Then you use a mouthwash. Then maybe you drink a cup of black tea, which naturally pulls high levels of this mineral straight out of the soil while the tea leaves are growing.
And here's a concept from the research that totally blew my mind. It is called the halo effect. Basically, even if you are totally proactive and you live in a town that explicitly voted to keep this mineral out of your water, you are still drinking it.
The halo effect is the perfect example of why measuring our intake is nearly impossible. Think of a massive factory that makes your favorite fruit juice or soda or even soup broth. That factory is located in a major city, and that city treats its municipal water supply with the mineral.
Okay.
The factory uses millions of gallons of that city water to make the soda and the juice. The food acts like a giant sponge soaking up all the mineral. They bottle it up, put it on a truck, and ship it to your town with untreated water. When you buy that soda at the grocery store and drink it, you are drinking the other city's treated water. You are getting the dose, even if you try to avoid it.
So your body is essentially acting like a bucket under a leaky roof. You get a drop of the mineral from the toothpaste, a drop from the black tea, a drop from the soda made 3 states away, a drop from the soup.
Yes, exactly.
And scientists call this aggregate exposure. When they test a pregnant mother to see how much of the mineral is in her blood, they aren't just testing her tap water, they are testing the sum total of everything she has consumed.
This raises an important question, though, about how we can possibly control a dose of something when it's hidden in so many places. When a doctor writes you a prescription for antibiotics, they tell you exactly how many milligrams to take, and they know you aren't secretly getting hidden doses of antibiotics from your soda or your tea.
Right.
But with this mineral, the government is just blindly adding more of it to the water without having any idea how full your personal bucket already is.
And frankly, that's a bit heartbreaking when you look at who is affected. Let's talk about newborn babies, specifically babies who are fed powdered formula. If we are worried about overflowing buckets, formula-fed babies have the smallest buckets of all.
They do. A tiny infant weighs just a few pounds, but their diet consists entirely of liquid. If a parent is buying powdered infant formula at the store, they have to mix it with water at home.
Right.
If they mix that powder with tap water that has the mineral added to it, the math becomes incredibly concerning. That tiny baby is drinking up to 70 times more water per pound of their body weight than a baby who is exclusively breastfed.
70 times the exposure. And a baby's brain is in the most rapid stage of development possible. Now, explain to me how the government usually handles safety limits for chemicals. Because from what I read in the sources, there is usually a massive safety cushion built into the rules, right?
Yes. Normally, toxicology is very strict about buffer zones. Let's say scientists test a chemical in a lab and find out that being exposed to a level of 100 causes harm. The environmental agencies will not set the legal limit at 99. They won't even set it at 50.
They need a cushion.
They will build in a massive safety buffer, usually a factor of 10 or even 100. They will mandate that humans can only be exposed to a level of 1 or 10. They do this because human beings are diverse. Some people are sick, some are elderly, some are tiny infants, so you need a massive cushion to ensure nobody gets hurt.
But with this mineral in our water, the math is entirely broken.
The buffer is basically non-existent. The gap between what the dentists say is the optimal dose for your teeth and the dose that the toxicology reports say might dim the lights in a child's brain is incredibly narrow. And for some people, like that formula-fed baby or someone who drinks a ton of black tea and factory-made soda, there is absolutely no buffer zone at all. Their bucket is overflowing.
So, if you are a low-income parent who has to rely on powdered baby formula mixed with tap water, your baby is getting a drastically higher dose than a baby whose parents buy expensive bottled water.
Unfortunately, yes. It is a profound disparity.
That feels like a massive injustice built right into the pipes of our cities. You can empty the bucket if you have money for a reverse osmosis filter, but if you don't, you're just stuck.
And it's exactly this combination of factors: the shrinking buffer zone, the uncontrollable halo effect, and the severe risks to vulnerable developing brains that finally caused the legal system to step in and throw up a stop sign.
Which brings us to the actual courtroom drama happening right now. Recently, a federal judge was handed all of this evidence. They looked at the massive toxicology reviews. They looked at the Canadian and Mexican intelligence score drops. They looked at the baby formula math, and they handed down a historic ruling.
It really was historic.
The judge declared that putting this mineral into the public water at the current standard levels poses an unreasonable risk to the brain development of children.
Now, before we get into the mechanics of this ruling, we really need to pause and make something explicitly clear to you, our listener.
Oh, absolutely.
We are impartially reporting on these legal rulings and government actions based entirely on the source documents we analyzed for this deep dive. We are not taking sides.
Nope, we're just the tour guides through the paperwork.
Right. We are not endorsing the viewpoints of the politicians, we are not cheering for the judges, and we are not campaigning for the activists. Our only mission today is to break down the actual facts of what happened in these documents and explain how the legal machinery works.
Right, we are totally neutral here. So, looking closely at that legal paperwork, explain this phrase the judge used, unreasonable risk. Because the defense in the courtroom argued that the science wasn't perfectly settled yet. They said, hey, we need more studies. We don't have 100% absolute proof that the water is causing the brain changes. Why didn't the judge listen to that?
Because the specific law they were arguing under, the Toxic Substances Control Act, doesn't require absolute perfection. Think about it. If the law required 100% undeniable proof of a disaster before the government could act, it would take 40 years of human suffering to ban a poison.
The damage would already be done to millions of kids.
Instead, the law is designed around risk management. It requires the government to act when the risk of harm is simply too high to justify keeping things the way they are.
So the judge looks at the data and says, look, maybe it's only a few intelligence points and maybe we need more studies to map out the exact cellular biology, but the safety buffer is gone. The potential harm to a baby's brain is severe. Therefore, rolling the dice every single day with the public water supply is an unreasonable risk.
Exactly. And the judge's order is fascinating because of what it doesn't do. The judge did not tell the nation's Environmental Protection Agency exactly how to solve the problem.
I love the sports analogy for this. Think of the judge like a referee in a football game, and the environmental agency is the head coach. The referee sees an illegal play happening on the field, the unreasonable risk. The referee throws a yellow penalty flag onto the grass and stops the game.
Right, game paused.
Now, the referee doesn't walk over to the coach and hand him a playbook saying, you must run this exact running play on the next down. The referee just says, you can't keep playing the game the way you just did. It's a penalty. Fix it. The agency might decide to just mail a strong warning label to every household, or they might decide to ban the mineral from the water completely. The referee leaves that choice to the coach, but they force the coach to make a choice.
And the government is reacting. Following this monumental ruling, leaders from the new administration's environmental agency, along with the health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., announced they are stepping in to take action.
Taking it to the next level.
They are launching a massive gold standard review of the entire practice under the laws that protect safe drinking water. In their announcements, they noted that science isn't static. It evolves as our tools get better. They also pointed out a fascinating global fact, which is that the vast majority of Europe has already abandoned this practice.
Okay, so if the judge says it's a risk and the government is reviewing it, what happens to the water in our taps tomorrow morning? Is the water suddenly different?
No, tomorrow morning, the water is exactly the same as it was today. The legal machinery moves slowly. The environmental agencies have to gather expert panels. They have to open up periods for public comment where citizens can voice their opinions, and they have to draft a totally new rule from scratch.
So it's going to take a minute.
Right, but the wheels are officially turning. The status quo is broken, and change is almost certainly coming down the pipeline.
So what does this all mean? And this inevitable change forces us to confront the biggest, heaviest question of all. Because as we wrap up this deep dive, it becomes incredibly clear that this battle isn't just about chemistry or biology or water pipes. It is a massive debate about human rights, ethics, and how we actually live together as a society.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are watching two extremely powerful, extremely valid ethical principles collide at high speed.
Okay, what's the first one?
Let's look at the first principle, the moral obligation to do good for the community. Dental decay is not just a cosmetic issue. It is a brutal, painful, systemic health crisis, especially for vulnerable populations. It causes massive infections that can spread to the heart. It prevents adults from passing job interviews.
Yeah, poor dental health is devastating.
It makes children cry in pain instead of paying attention in math class. And dentistry is incredibly expensive. Putting this mineral in the public water is arguably the cheapest, most effective, most equitable way to protect the teeth of the poorest members of society who cannot afford a dentist. It prevents an incalculable amount of human suffering.
But standing directly across from that is the second principle, the right to personal bodily autonomy and informed consent. Public water is a monopoly. You cannot easily opt out of the water coming into your house. You need it to boil your pasta, to bathe your kids, to make your coffee.
You're kind of trapped.
Critics of the practice argue that deliberately adding a chemical to treat a disease through the public water supply is the literal definition of forced medication.
And we have to ask ourselves how we handle other public health interventions. Think about how society handles a contagious virus. If a highly contagious virus is sweeping through a city, society generally agrees to certain strict rules like quarantines or vaccine mandates because your sickness can directly infect me.
Right, you can breathe on me and make me sick.
Exactly. But a cavity is not a virus. Your rotting tooth cannot magically infect my healthy tooth across a crowded room. It is a completely personal, non-contagious condition.
Right. So forcing every single citizen in a city, regardless of their age, weight, or medical history, to swallow a treatment for a non-contagious condition crosses a massive red line for bioethicists. It's like making a giant 100-gallon pot of soup for a massive neighborhood block party.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Thanks. So you are the chef, and you know that some people in the neighborhood need more salt in their diet for their health. So you take a massive container of salt and heavily salt the entire giant pot of soup. But there are people at the party with high blood pressure who could be seriously hurt by extra salt.
And they have to eat it anyway.
Because you salted the main pot, the person with high blood pressure has no choice. If they want to eat, they have to eat your medicine.
That soup pot analogy is exactly how Europe views this issue. Many major European countries like Germany, France, and Sweden looked at this science decades ago and decided to ban or stop putting the mineral in their water. They decided the ethics didn't add up.
So what do they do instead?
Instead, they use a different model. They leave the giant pot of soup completely unsalted, but they put a salt shaker right there on the dining table for anyone who wants it. In Europe, if you want the cavity-fighting magic, you can buy table salt at the grocery store that has the mineral added to it, or you can just buy fluoride toothpaste. They empower the individual to make their own medical choice.
It really makes you think, what is the right balance between protecting the most vulnerable kids from tooth decay and protecting other vulnerable kids from potential brain risks? How do you choose which vulnerable child gets priority?
It is arguably the most difficult question in modern public health, because as long as the treatment is hidden inside the public water supply, you cannot protect both groups at the same time. You have to choose.
This whole debate points to a completely fascinating future. What if the era of treating an entire city's water supply with one massive blunt brush is coming to an end? As technology advances and we learn so much more about our unique genetics and our unique individual buckets, maybe the future of public health isn't about treating a city of millions as a single identical block. Maybe the future is about delivering hyper-personalized, perfectly tailored health interventions right to your individual door. Something to think about the next time you turn on your tap. Thanks for coming along on this deep dive with us. Remember to follow us on your favorite podcast platform and see you on the next dive.